Welcome to another episode of Real Deal Investing. I'm Jerron Kelley, one of your hosts. And of course, as always, we've got Larry Mastropieri, my co-host. Hi, Larry.
Good to be here.
As always, I love it. We've got a great guest today. We've got Danny Schwab, actually a client of mine for years, but now a good friend. Danny and I have worked together for, probably 10 years
about
now,
that,
give or take about a decade.
Yeah.
Danny is a property manager. He has multiple locations in his property management company, and great guy. And just want to bring you on here to kind of talk about the property management business. Also, you do some transactions yourself, selling properties for clients, buying properties, and just have a chat about real estate. And kind of let's start with your background, sort of.
Absolutely.
Where you grew up and how you got into real estate. And
absolutely, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you guys very much.
Absolutely.
Danny Schwab. My company is KeyRenter Property Management. I grew up in Chicago. I bought my first investment property in 1994. I've made every mistake in this game that you can make. Renting to the cocktail waitress without doing a background screening, to deferring maintenance that has to be taken care of and not taking care of it myself. So I really made a lot of mistakes in my career in my 20s, and really got that bug, right? Every investor says it, right? You buy that first property, you go through all of it and all the fear and the anxiety, and then you close on that, and then you place a tenant, and then it's producing income, and then the equity grows. You want to buy more, and so I did that game up until about 2009. If you guys remember, there was a slight downtick in the market.
Just a little.
Some people call it a recession. So
some called it a depression.
I was very heavily leveraged, I think is a term people like to use. So
there you go. Yep.
I got beat up pretty bad. I bought a lot of properties in 06 and 07. I did some big development deals. So
this is in Florida?
No, in Chicago.
You were in the Chicago area.
I was in the Chicago market. Yeah, I got in about 2007. I got involved in a $4 million new construction project. We were building 16 units. Elevator opens up into the units, and wow. Right as we got going, the banks did their fun thing where like, well, you need 3 more pre-sales for us to fund the next construction loan, and then three more until the time where they just stopped funding the loan. So I got pretty beat up, and I transitioned out of doing property management for myself and really focused on how do I turn it into a business. So around 2012, 2013, there wasn't a lot of residential property managers doing just property management. Most of the property managers were real estate brokers that did it on the side, or they worked for HOAs and things like that. And I never wanted to work for an HOA. So I figured out how to professionalize it. I moved to Florida about 2015 and started KeyRenter, and just built it one property at a time. Just used my lifetime of experience of doing the leasing, right? Doing it one property at a time, right? It's very easy to get caught up and not go to a property and not meet who your tenant is, and not, as I like to say, do the sniff test. So I really wanted to have a business where I was not stuck in the admin role, or I wasn't just doing marketing and business development, where I was actually in the field, because that's what I enjoy. I love assessing properties, find their highest and best use, and how do we improve it. And I was into development, so I love the building of things. I love remodeling homes, taking down walls. And so I'm really involved in that aspect of property management. It was afforded me the ability to kind of pick and choose my clients and not have to deal with clients that didn't have that same thought process, right? As we were kind of talking about earlier, I think it's really important to reinvest in your properties and really to make them very high quality, so you have that tenant that wants to renew, right? I recently was looking at NARPM, which is our professional organization, and they were talking about the main reason, I think over 40% of the people say in a poll why they leave their apartment or their condo, their rental, to go to another one.
Management.
It's management, but it's really based on maintenance and how they're treated. When someone, when you're a homeowner and you live in Boston and someone calls you and say, hey, my toilet's broken, you panic, right? You don't have the systems in place. You don't have the automation of it, right? Which we all do today in property management, our software and everything. So I really enjoy the aspect of not handling the operations, right? We have a great team involved, and we have great vendors, and we do a great job. But it's the idea of meeting clients and helping them get their first property, or really meeting a client that has one or two, and they're like, we're thinking about selling. We've had nothing but a disaster here, revolving door of tenants, and really educating them and putting a plan in place to have long-term tenants. Because that's all we want. We want long-term tenants. It's not about maximizing how much rent you get each year. It's about making sure you don't have vacancies, you don't have turnover, right? No matter what your rent is, if you have a tenant for 5, 6, 7 years without any turnover, you do better than someone who maximizes rent and there's turnover every year. I mean, you guys know that.
That's the key.
Yeah.
I would say the number one key from owning properties, Larry and I both own properties, multifamily apartments, is not having that turnover, because it's not just the vacancy that maybe it's going to take you a month to find another tenant, but it's also that turnover cost. I mean, it's thousands of dollars every time I turn.
At least.
And
then the commissions you typically end up paying.
The commissions that you're paying another month of rent to lease it up. I mean, it gets sometimes prohibitively expensive. So.
On that one unit, you probably lose 3 months of rent, right?
Absolutely.
Minimum.
Absolutely.
And that's even just if you're just doing a paint job and fixing a few things.
And if you're that property manager or that owner that just sits back and sends a nasty letter and threatens eviction and says, get out of my house,
you're going to have tons of turnover.
And you're going to have some really bad situations that we've all seen before, right? Where the person moves out, but they leave their dogs there to use it as a toilet for 2 weeks before the sheriff comes to kick them out. I mean, there's all kinds of it. But you have that relationship with those tenants, and you're taking care of hey, there's one toilet in there and it's broken. You have someone there same day. We live in Florida. When your AC's down on a Friday night and you tell someone, hey, we'll come out on Monday or Tuesday versus coming that night, you develop that relationship with the tenant. So when their life changes, they have a horrible situation, a sick child, or they get into a car accident and can't work, you can go talk to them and develop that relationship to get them to move out, to not have to be in a nasty fight, to help them find a studio apartment or something, and you end up moving someone out and you still get a 5-star review out of it. That's the relationship that you want to build. But you only do that by providing excellent service. So that's really the bottom line of my philosophy, is that you have to take care of your tenant. Your tenant and your property manager, or you as the owner, you can't have an adversarial relationship, right? And sometimes, and what I talk to my team about all the time, just let the guy vent. He's not yelling at you. It's not your fault.
It's the situation.
It's the situation. You can say, I'm sorry you're going through that, without taking blame and responsibility, right?
Exactly. Empathize with them.
I'm a married guy. The hardest thing it ever is sometimes to say, I'm sorry, right? and you got to do it.
Even when it's not your fault.
It's never my fault. I've never made a mistake.
Of course.
But you know what I mean? It's
Same here.
You have to turn that dynamic around with your tenants and really let them know that you're there for them. And sometimes it's like a shoulder to cry on,
It is. It's you really think about it. These are not homeowners, so on one hand, they're not going to take the pride in fixing up their property, et cetera. But on the other hand, they have a minimum standard of living. People do. The great majority of people are not slobs. They want a decent place to live. They want things that are working. They don't want to be here in Florida in the 7-8 months out of the year where it's unbearable to not have proper working AC, all the basics.
Absolutely.
And the other thing I find interesting that, especially as a property manager, but let's say you're a self-managing landlord, investor, you really do wear, as a property manager, you wear two hats. One is definitely your loyalty is to the landlord, because that's who's hiring you. You're their agent, fiduciary responsibility. Correct. But you do also have a responsibility to the tenant. And, you don't want bad Google reviews, because tenants can leave them. You don't want bad relationships, because they can leave and they can move out in the middle of the night and leave the keys there, and then your client's stuck, and then your landlord's unhappy because A, B, and C didn't happen, and now they have a vacancy only 3 months into a lease, or all those scenarios that pop up. So you're right. You really do have to wear those two hats at the same time.
I call myself a referee. Yeah, I've got an owner on this side, I've got a tenant on this side, and both of the time they're both a little bit off, right?
And they're both unhappy.
And they're both unhappy, right? What's the old expression? It's like a great deal, neither side's happy, but we can both live with it, right? And the beauty of dealing with owners like that is to when you get that owner that hires you, right? And you have to build that trust with them, and you have some early success, and they start to buy into your system, And then you can convince them that, hey, this is no longer the home you raised your children in. This is no longer your personal residence. This is an engine, right? This is your business engine. Let's put money into this business engine. Let's replace that gross carpet. Let's put in luxury vinyl plank flooring that's going to last a decade. But let's go the extra mile. Let's buy an extra 20% so we can fix the high traffic areas, right? Let's get it so that we can plan for a decade down the road. Turn this into an annuity instead of a money pit, right? Because so many people come to me and they're like, I don't know what to do. This is a money pit. It's a revolving door. And I go, this is the easiest thing to deal with. We can spend our way out of it. We can fix it up. We can get a high quality person in there. We can get a 2-income family in there. They're going to stay multiple years, right? Yeah. It's really about convincing people that you have a plan, putting the plan in place, and not settling, right? I'm a realtor. I love realtors. My business is working with realtors, but many realtors are transactional. They find the first warm body that has a 620 credit score, makes 2 times the monthly income. Let's place the tenant. That's not my game. My game is to find the best fit. Right? Sometimes it takes a little bit longer. But
you have to live with them.
You have to live with them. I always say that.
You do too. Yeah.
You're the one that really has to live with them. The owner doesn't have to live with them. The owner has to live with them, right?
Yeah.
So it's really important to find that right fit. And what I mean by that is that, in South Florida here, I think I heard a crazy number, like 75 to 80% of all new construction is in HOAs, right? A lot of people we work with every day are not fit to live in an HOA, right? They have the toys, the cars, the trucks, the motorcycles, they have the 3 dogs, they have people coming by all the time. There's a lot of people that aren't fit. They want to rent an HOA house from you. You really got to say, hey, I don't think this is a good fit for you. I think we should find you a single family home, maybe out in Jupiter Farms or out in the acreage. You have some land and you can do your own thing. So it's really about getting to know. It's not transactional. For me, in dealing with rentals and things like that, it's really about developing a relationship and knowing who your client is. And to me, the client is the tenant and the owner.
Yeah.
In that scenario.
After doing this for as long as we have been doing this and having the apartments we have, I usually have that conversation with the manager where I'm just like, hey, he's asking me, hey, what do you want to do about this? I'm like, well, what do you want to do about it? Because you're the guy that's talking to him. You're the guy that's meeting him, and like you've been in the unit. Like what's going on here? You decide. You tell me. So, and that's where you want to get to, right? That's the relationship you want to build. And
back to what you mentioned, Jerron, is that most people aren't slobs. They aren't bad people. But also a lot of people move to Florida and they don't know how to be a good tenant, right? We have a lot of people from South America. We have a lot of people, hey, you make a family dinner, you leave it on the stove for a day or so. Well, you can't do that in Florida, right? We have to seal all of our food. We have to put all our food in refrigeration or in sealed containers because of insects, because of bugs.
Roaches, bugs, ants.
So it's really important for you to educate somebody, and that's not a comfortable conversation sometimes to go into someone's house and say, hey, this isn't appropriate. Right? Yeah. What do we need to do to clean this up? You can't park your motorcycle inside the house, right? You can't live this way. You got to take your trash out after dinner, take it out to the dumpster. You leave your cans turned over in front of the HOA. Like, there's so many things that people don't really get all the time. It doesn't make them a bad person. No. Right?
Agreed.
And those are tough conversations.
Yeah. In some ways, you're having to almost like parent them, the parenting they never got.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go. Yeah. You have to be that parent, but you have to do it in a gentle, polite way, but a firm way as well, because you are representing the interests of the landlord, and there are consequences if you don't do these things. But, I think it's probably, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you probably have levels of escalation where you start off just with a quick, polite conversation. Hey, could you do me a favor and do this? We're going to send over the pest control guy to do this, but need you to do this. But then when it's the second time, then maybe you need to be a little firmer, and then you escate up to giving 7-day notices. And
the final escalation is to you.
Then you and I are in court.
Law firm representing every county in Florida.
There you go.
But no, absolutely, it's about education, it's about working with people, and again, you develop that rapport the day you meet that tenant. That's why
you want to keep them out of eviction. Whatever you could do, you want to do that.
Absolutely. For the record, eviction does not get you any money.
No.
Eviction, as I learned from you a long time ago, eviction gets you possession of the property. At that point, the relationship's over. All you want to do is get possession back. But it's just about, it's also, I found that within the process, everybody's happy when you say, hey, you're approved, right? You get to move in. And then that's the time where you really have to say, before we collect any funds from you, before we execute this lease, let's go over all of our rules and regulations. Let's go over our expectations of you. At that point, they're happy But if you try to do that 2 months in, 3 months in, they're like, what are you talking about? I never
Yeah.
would have signed the lease if I knew that. So we're developing new documents all the time to execute with the lease addendums that say you're responsible for replacing filters. Even though it says it in the lease, there is no smoking in the house. And we have people sign on the dotted line at move-in just to agree to these house rules. It's written in the lease.
And then they fire up a cigarette 2 minutes after.
Yeah.
No,
But you know, how many
yeah,
people
of
are
course.
how many people are reading your lease when they sign it? 20%, maybe
1%.
1%.
Yeah.
So-
5% or less.
So
probably,
so
yeah.
so just really going over expectations with people, and you know
Yeah.
what you expect from them, what you expect with them if there's a termite situation, right?
Yeah.
How this works, right? It isn't go to the Four Seasons and spend a week on the owner. It's hey, when are you going to be available to stay with family or friends, or you know go visit relatives? When are you going to take a vacation? That's a perfect opportunity for us to tent the house.
Yeah.
Another little lesson. It's not if, it's when. In Florida with termites, right? Every house will get them eventually. You got to do it. It's like, it's not just on the owner to spend the money every time there's an issue, but it's about you educating the tenants. And trust me, when you find good tenants that want to work with you, that are positive people, you can have great relationships.
Those are the ones you want to keep too.
Those-
You want to keep them in your universe. Yeah,
There's
for sure.
been countless times where I took a financial hit, not large, but a financial hit on something with a tenant just to make them happy. Where the owner's like, I'm not going to do that. The tenant's like, well, I'm really upset. Well, I don't want you to be upset. How can I work this out with you?
Yeah.
You know, and I think that goes a long way, right? Because
think that's
you're
great.
building this rapport.
If you give up a month of commission or 2 months or something, just to keep them happy, keep them in there,
right. Or
keep
like,
everyone happy.
You know, we run under a lot of static with occupied showings, right? All owners want, when a tenant's moving out, they want to show the
They want
property.
immediately
That's
rent
a
They
nightmare.
want
somewhere.
me to rent it.
Yeah.
We have HOAs where you can take up to a month to get
Yeah.
approved. So we have to start showings 90 days ahead of time. Nobody that has like kids and stuff wants somebody doing
traipsing through their house.
Right.
Yeah,
It, like,
sure.
so you really have to
Especially
help.
when they're not there. That's the real
100%.
problem.
You know, and you know, we all want to do as realtors, like we love doing an open house on Saturday between 10 and 11:30 or Sunday like 2 to 4. Nobody wants that, but we work it out and we offer them something for that. Hey,
Yeah.
how about I bring in a cleaning company and we'll do a full house clean for you, valued at $400. Would that make you happy? The mom always likes that because she always gets stuck with it, even though she's a mom, she works, you know, she's got a full life, but you know, so things like that. Like, hey, why don't you, you know, before the
That's a
pandemic,
great incentive. I never really
Yeah.
thought about that.
before the
Yeah.
pandemic,
To incentivize them.
I used to have gift cards and everything for the movie theaters.
Yeah.
That kind of ended, I think, during the pandemic. But go take your kids to the movies. You know,
Yeah.
go have a fun time. You know, so it's really just about thinking a little bit outside of the box, putting yourself. Another thing I talk to my team about all the time: put yourself in their position. Right? What would you say when someone calls you up and says, "Hey, I got someone who's going to come by tomorrow at 7:30 at night. Can you show them the unit for me?" Come on, right? That's not a positive thing, but like let's work. Manipulation is not a bad word in real estate, right? We all use it. So hey, we're going to help when you move out, right? We're the ones that are going over your security deposit. Maybe we leave your TV mount on the wall and we don't charge you to take it off and paint and everything. And you need a new TV mount, I'll get you a new one from Costco. You know, leave it there. You don't love that TV. You know, it's an old look. Leave it on the wall. Like there's ways to work it out with tenants that you know help them in the move out. I have relationships with moving companies. I always try to get them a discounted move out. You know, at the beginning of my career when I first moved to Florida, I used to do all that. I used to do the moves. So I would rent a box truck, get some guys.
wow.
Yeah, try to help. Try to you know things were tight, relocating here, and you know without you know I started my business. I actually was living in California. Met my wife and decided that I wanted to start a property management company in Florida. And I got my real estate license in San Francisco for Florida. I started doing the marketing, figured out, started getting some calls and said, okay, now's the time to move. And one of the ways I financed, like starting my business was anytime we had a move in or move out, I always said, hey, did you get a quote from a mover? And if they said yes, I'm like, okay, I'll beat it. You know, I'll beat it by 20%, 30%, whatever it was, and I would put it together.
That's
so.
actually really smart. Though.
Yeah,
You're
it
a
was
hustler, man.
grinded.
I mean,
he's a grinder. Yeah, I love it. I'm impressed. That's awesome. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
How many properties or units do you manage right now, and where?
Absolutely. So I break my company up into right now. We would basically 3 different entities, all under the KeyRenter umbrella. We have Broward County, we have Palm Beach County, and then I manage up in Jacksonville. So between Broward and Palm Beach County, I'm about 300 doors.
Nice.
pretty much predominantly single-family homes, condos, townhouses. I have a couple properties that are 12 units or, stuff like that, but pretty much just single-family homes. Jacksonville, we're about 450 doors, and we have a couple of bigger buildings. We have like a 112-unit building and like an 87-unit building, and then the rest is broken up. So,
how'd you end up in Jacksonville?
I like to acquire other people's businesses, when I can. I think it's if you have somebody that has a good trade name, that has some good businesses. But I was basically coaching a guy up in Jacksonville. It was his second career. He was formerly in the Navy and like a good old boy. And he was starting to get his business together, and I was just helping him out. And he passed away, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
And basically acquired it from his wife. She was trying to sell it for unrealistic number, and I said, I'm glad to come in and make you whole. She had some loans and extend it. She wanted nothing to do with the business, so I was able to acquire it.
That's a tough business for a wife to take over.
Yeah. I mean, and at the point too they were maybe at 60 doors.
Yeah.
So.
Wow. So you've really grown it since then.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it was.
It's from here, which is a 5-hour drive to.
Yeah.
To
you drive slow. Yeah. No, it was great. It was such a great opportunity for me because in our world we have all these remote team members. Some in America, some in South America, some in Asia, and I had a great team. I had a gal that was living in Salt Lake City. Her boyfriend at the time was living in Vegas. He was doing residential real estate sales, and I recruited them to move to Jacksonville.
Whoa.
So they ended up moving to Jacksonville. They got married last year. It's been
amazing.
Really cool, real cool. Yeah, his son now lives with them too.
You created that idea, and you just kind of sold him on it.
And he went from doing sales as a just doing residential sales to becoming the business development and manager and really growing the company. And
they've helped you grow.
I give him a ton of credit.
That's amazing.
Dusty, we love you, brother. He's done amazing things in sales, and again, I'm not
impressive.
I think we all have to know what our skill set is, right? Mm-hmm. I'm not a salesman in the fact as people that do residential sales, realtors, I have nothing but respect for them. That's hard work. Yeah. Having these transactional jobs and fighting every time for that client that might take 100 hours of your time and then not get to the finish line and say, oh, my niece now has just got a real estate license. I'm going to go with her, right? So, and just like I'm sure most realtors aren't going to say, yeah, but that guy's getting calls at 10 o'clock at night with a busted toilet, right? So we all take what we can get. But.
Totally. There's pluses and minuses. I mean, you have a consistent, to a degree, income because you're diversified in the sense you got hundreds of clients that are paying X every month,
and not one client that could hurt me if they leave, or if I terminate them if they don't fit.
Even if you lost a 112-unit building, that would stink, but you're going to go on and you'll be fine.
Those aren't the most profitable for property managers.
I'm sure it's the lowest margon.
Yeah, there's thin margins, lots of headaches, lots of man hours. But yeah, absolutely. No, I'm. That's one of the things I love about my business is that if a lot of property management agreements, if the client cancels on you, they have to pay a fee of like 1 month's rent. I see all these penalties. I'm a month-to-month business. If you're not happy with the services or your situation changes, send me an email saying, I terminate, we collect rent the following month, and we break up. And I couldn't be
because all we're gonna do is just make each other's lives a nightmare.
Absolutely.
So it's a divorce. Like, let's get divorced.
Yeah, I really love it because I can do the same thing to them. Yeah, if they're not on board, they how many times in the world have we been in these situations where the AC breaks? Right now, average AC right now I bet would be around $6,000 for an average for a single family home. How many times have I had a client in my life that said to me, "Well, I can't afford an AC right now."
Well, then what?
Put in a window unit for them. Yeah, that's not how it works.
Insane.
That is insane.
And there's so we're gonna put in the AC. If you need a little bit of help, I'm here to help you. Otherwise, I have to terminate with you. I'm gonna refund their security deposit. I'm gonna refund their last month's rent, and I'm gonna walk away because that's not an appropriate thing to do to a tenant. Right? That's that investor-driven mentality. That's just cash on cash returns.
That's it.
This is a long-term game. You want something, a great investment. We all know, right? That you diversify your stock portfolio, you buy some real estate, but that only works if that investment 10 years down the road is in better shape 10 years from now than it is today. How do you do that? You got to reinvest in the property.
So many of those inexperienced landlords want all the upside and none of the downside.
Right.
That's it.
As a real estate broker, I'm not doing a ton of leasing, but I do some, and that's that's a conversation I frequently have as we're entering into the lease, because I step away, I'm not managing. But when we enter into the lease, a tenant might say, hey, the carpet's a little dirty. Can we either replace it or get it steam cleaned? And I get landlords that I'm renting this properties out for. I'm like they don't want to do it,
right.
and it's like maybe there's like 5 things on the list, like, hey, paint this wall, do this thing, and I usually tell them, like, do you want to argue with them right now? Do you want to start this relationship do you want to make them not like you the second they move in? You're self-managing this, by the way, too. You got to deal with these guys.
Right,
like,
absolutely.
you make them your best friend. It's going to cost you $1,500 on a $4,000 a month rental.
Right.
Like, what are we talking about right now? Why are we even doing this? Plus, I usually bring my crews in and have them do it for them, and then they just bill them. So it's just like,
and
this isn't complicated.
Take the opportunity to renew a lease, do a lease extension at a higher rate.
Right.
What do you want? This is what I want. How do we have a meeting of the minds? Right?
There you go.
You know what I mean? We all get tenants that come into a property and say, well, the refrigerator isn't nice enough for me. That's not something you're just going to jump down and do. But if you can get a tenant on an old gross carpet to renew at a higher rate, and you put in vinyl plank flooring or tile or whatever it is, that's a lifetime worth of at least 10 years of an upgrade that's going to produce so much rental income for you in the future. That tenant, if you replace that carpet, with a nice vinyl plank, they'll renew that year, they'll renew the next year, and they'll be thankful for you for doing it. It's about building those relationships.
Because at the end of every year, the tenants will weigh in their mind. Everyone does this. Is they're weighing their options, and they're going to have on their the pro side of staying is what's the condition of the unit. It's a pain to move out. How am I going to come up with first, last, and security? Do I have that money?
Right.
All those things.
Is there a better deal outside of here?
My kids maybe in this school. Do I want to take the chance of not being able to find another place around here? And also, people are sophisticated now, and tenants are sophisticated. They'll go online and they'll see what rents are in that zip code, and they'll look around in the 2 miles surrounding them or 5 miles, and if your rents are a market or maybe a little below market, then they're going to stay. I mean, you could actually be, as long as your product's decent, tell me if I'm wrong here, but you could even be slightly above market, because they don't want to go and have to come up with first, last, and security and do the move and move into another place that's comparable.
100%. One of the ways that when we talk about renewals with tenants, when you're in an up market or a down market, right? When you're in an up market and they say, hey, I don't want to renew, or you ask for a renewal with a $200 rent increase, right? And it's given that it should be there, right? So what I like to do is pull those comps for them, show them what's going on, show them where the market is, that even with this rent increase, you're still below market. But then let's talk about what's your wish list? Like, yes, sometimes you get I want the $4,000 refrigerator, but a lot of times you get, I want a new microwave. Yeah. Or the dryer takes 4 cycles to dry.
$600 we can spend that.
Like,
okay. Yeah.
Done. Clean the ducts. Replace
Sometimes,
the washer dryer.
As in property management, right? The owner, you've been dealing. That owner hires you, but that tenant's been there for 6 or 7 years. That investor just bought the property, and that investor doesn't even know what the property's like.
Yeah.
So you go there and you're like, oh my God, the paint's cracking on the walls. The caulk around the bathroom is disgusting. Well, let me come in here and clean this place up. Give me some time. Let's schedule. Let's take care of the cheap stuff, right? One of the easiest things to do is to fix that half bath in the hallway that your guests look at every time they come over, right? Dealing with a lot of, I have a feminist view of property management, right? You want the place to be clean. You want the baseboards clean, the bathrooms clean. Because anytime a woman comes in, with a man or not, they look at it and they're like, that's disgusting. They walk right out. That's that's the client you want. Somebody's going to take care of the property, keep it clean. So the easiest things to fix is that small bathroom that's 80 square feet.
Yeah.
Put in some new tile, replace, resurface the tub, put in a new Home Depot vanity for a couple $100.
Yeah.
You just remodeled this whole.
Spend $1,500, $2,000 and be out the door. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we all know how important it is to paint a unit, at least to paint the baseboards, trim, things like that. Things that investors are like, oh, I don't want to spend the money this year. Well, spending the money is why you're going to have a tenant that's going to stay 3, 4, 5 more years, right? And that's really what it's about, retaining talent, right? We as business owners know how important it is to take care of our employees. Yeah. Your tenants are your employees, right? They're the ones that are making it happen.
100%.
I have some questions about where you feel the market is right now, since you have so many units and you're managing all this stuff, and then how the market is here compared to the other market you manage in Jacksonville.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the market is significantly down today. Renewals on high-end single-family homes. When I say high-end, I'm not talking about the ultra-wealthy, but a Boca Raton, single-family home in a gated community could be $5,500, $6,000. We're seeing that those markets are down at least $500. So we're getting people to renew, but when it goes on the market, we're drastically having to reduce the price.
10% maybe.
10%, but the problem is that typically homeowners don't want to reduce the price right away, so it sits for 30 days. Then they feel the sting. Then they reduce it. Now, as you mentioned before, you're 2 to 3 months out. That's $15,000 to $20,000 on some properties. You can't afford to do it. So to me, again, renewing that tenant, even if you're giving, I haven't gotten to the point where I've had to do rent reductions with certain properties, but when owners are coming to me asking for an increase, I'm like, are you not a chance, right?
I get owners that I put tenants in their property from a year ago, 2 years ago, and they're calling me and they're saying, hey, what should I do? Should I keep this tenant? Should we just go to market? I'm like, are you out of your mind?
Yeah.
You don't want me to release this. This is going to cost you a fortune. Plus you're going to get less money.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say to people, I go,
that's good. You're doing the right thing.
Totally.
I say it all the time. I mean, I'm like a broken record. Financially, for me, let's move everybody out.
Right, exactly.
But
terminate everyone,
fiduciary
start over.
responsibility is for you. So you're crazy if you let that tenant go. I go, look at their payment history. Yeah. We want to keep talent. So, for instance, to talk about some different markets. So I do a lot of business in Port St. Lucie and a little bit north from like Jupiter, Hope Sound, Port St. Lucie. And a lot of people post-pandemic bought these single-family homes because they were new construction, $400,000, $500,000, getting $3,000, $3,500 a month in rent on a single-family home. Well, you're not getting that up there anymore. It's down to $2,500, $2,750. So we have a lot of owners that bought, at a high, and now it's starting to come back. So they're kind of panicking. You can't sell it right now and make a profit, so you got to just keep it rented. Again, it's about, I sound like a broken record, but it's about not having vacancies. So put someone in there. Even if you're taking a lot less rent, let's get it rented in 15 days. We still have that HOA approval time in a lot of these communities. You're going to be out a bunch of money, but stop the bleeding.
Yeah.
Get and really focus on who that tenant is, right? I love, in this day and age, focusing on, looking really at who these tenants are, looking at these 2-income families or these people that sold their house and cashed out during the highs, right? Now they want to be permanent tenants for the next decade. What great people to have as tenants. Over 55, financially secure, have owned homes before, understand what they're getting into. They're there long-term. The older people get, they don't want to move at all, right? So getting that high rent with that 27-year-old guy that just got out of orthodontist school, is ready to buy something in a year, they'll pay more, but it'll cost you more in the long run. So up there, I'm seeing a lot, even on a higher quality product, rents are coming down. Now, if you look around more the Boca del Rey area, the Palm Beach Gardens, as long as your product is in very good condition, freshly painted, appliances are stainless steel or newer, right? No Formica countertops, you've got at least granite, everything is still renting relatively quickly. The smaller homes typically are having a harder time rent, but even that traditional 3-bedroom, 2-bath, or 4-bedroom, 3-bath with a pool, still a good, really good commodity to have. Units that aren't being taken care of, that aren't updated, are a nightmare. Yeah. Just bottom line. I am, for the first time in my career.
People are being picky. Tenants are rightfully
absolutely picky.
It's the market shifting to a tenant market.
Yeah.
From a landlord's market to a tenant market.
Absolutely a tenant market. I have, for the first time in my career, I'm turning down homes or rental properties, typically condos, townhouses, where when I go and meet and walk the property and meet the client, if they're not willing to make the repairs and the necessary, not even repairs, like a fresh coat of paint, because it needs it. If they're not willing to do it, let's just try to rent it. I go, you're not really a good fit for me. Tell somebody you're not a good fit for them. Watch their reaction.
Sometimes it's aggressive, right?
It's very aggressive. What do you mean? I can't believe you would say that. I go. I don't want to watch you make the same mistake. Hire me 2 or 3 months later, and then fire me and hire a realtor just to rent it, and then drop the price because you now have had that pain of 3 months. You can't get that money back. You're vacant for 3 months. That money is permanently gone. So if you want to look as an investor, I always try to tell people, you're looking at cash on cash returns today, but look at over 3 years and 5 years. You're vacant for 4 or 5 months. You have all this turnover. You're never going to be anywhere near the point you were, even if you got 25% less rent, but it was consistent over a 4-year period, right? Yeah. You always can do it. I mean, I'm managing some properties in not an upscale area, West Palm. There's a big property where, multifamily property. It's condos, but, all individually owned. And I've got units that are rented at $2,200 a month, And I've got new units that these guys bought, additional units that I'm trying to get $1,800 for.
Yep. Wow.
Right? And I've got tenants in that trying to renew their lease. We're trying to renew their lease. And they're like, can I take one of your other properties? And I'm like, I can't do that, but what can I do to make you happy? So we're remodeling some of these units. We're putting in new countertops. We're doing full paint jobs. We're updating, vanities.
Keep them in there.
Just to keep them in there because it's worth every penny. But having that conversation with foreign investors is not always the easy thing to do.
So that's funny. Just like I was just going to make a comment about this. We know somebody who manages. He facilitates and manages a ton of condos, and his commentary on this is rents are coming down fast, especially in the condo market.
Yes,
especially in that price point you just described.
He might even have units in those buildings too.
I'm sure
that's like his market.
Totally.
It's really about treating that client, that your current client, and making them happy, right? Where it's so easy to ignore that person. Paint my unit. Well, we don't really paint while you're during your lease, right? It's kind of difficult. Usually it gets into a little bit of a spat between the painter and the tenant because you just expect them to move all your furniture for you. Yeah. So it's like the occupied showings. It's about rolling up your sleeves, going to these properties, getting meeting of the minds, and making it work, right?
Are you seeing this in Jacksonville too? You're seeing a
Jacksonville,
bit of a dip?
Jacksonville didn't have that huge
run up
that we did.
Yeah.
So they're having a steady run up, but again, Jacksonville is Jacksonville is so vast in the space, right?
Yeah.
We have properties within Jacksonville that are an hour away from each other in the same city. So we're seeing a lot, and that's really a predominant area where we're walking away from a lot of new business because they're just not willing to make the product to a point where
makes sense.
Makes sense for us. But I get it. You own a property, you paid $120,000, and the idea of putting in now just to get it rented, $6,000 in paint and appliances, maybe a little bit more. They're just like, we're not able to do that. Well, I'm not able to help you for.
Yeah.
I mean, bottom line, right? We get like 9% of the rental income. So to kill myself for $80 a month,
doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, because I'm just fighting with people.
Yeah.
Because the tenant's not happy, the owner's not happy. It's just, it's hard. So I'm seeing a market getting tighter. You have to have a high quality product, no matter where it is, and you got to retain your tenants. So it's a very different market than we were, where you could just put a listing up. I mean, for a while, we weren't even using the MLS to rent things, right?
Right.
Put it on Zillow and you get 50 calls.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen anymore.
That's part of the reason why I wanted to connect with you more, because you mentioned you had stuff in Jacksonville, and I had just spent, 3 days in Jacksonville touring every active multifamily in that market, running around trying to get a sense of it, see if it was interesting. One of my takeaways there was the vacancies are higher than here, and it's softening as well.
Yeah.
And arguably the rents that they have, and even these call it workforce housing multifamily buildings, the demand is a little lighter there. That was my takeaway. You and I talked about that a little bit too, and that was just interesting to me to hear that you had some commentary on that. That's similar to what I found, because I was just talking to brokers and everybody, and when we're underwriting stuff today, I have just doubt of where the rent roll can be pushed to, because over the past 10, 15 years, we underwrite something, we're like, next year will be $100 more per unit, or whatever the number is. We can be optimistic about rents, and we've always won. We've always or overperformed the evaluation.
Not to get too technical, but with the Jacksonville market also is very different. Here we can typically get first, last, and security. We get somebody with a decent credit score. Up there is no last month's rent. There's people typically aren't putting in 1 month as a security deposit. So we've gone to some of these secondary insurance type companies where you can do a $500 deposit, or they're paying their deposit to that company on a monthly basis. So we've done some of these rent guarantee programs to lessen some of the issues. But to me, you're really focusing on going down instead of leveling up, because these properties don't warrant it. There's this great thing out there called Section 8. I think it has a really bad rap with a lot of people, but in certain areas, Section 8 pays higher than the rent. What I like about Section 8 is they have a minimum property standards. So when I tell an owner, hey, why am I not a good fit for you? Because you wouldn't even pass the Section 8 inspection. Your property would take $7,000 to get to pass the Section 8. I can't manage something that I can't at least rent on the Section 8 market. And again, I'm not putting down the Section 8. I like it.
That's a great kind of sales slash deflection technique, you know, because
I'm
Section
not
8
personally
is
insulting you.
You're not personally right. The federal government's insulting.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah. And to me, it's like there is something about like we have to have pride and respect in what we do as human beings. I can't be involved in something where there's a family living in a bad situation because I'm representing someone that doesn't want to pay, right? So there's something about these minimum property standards working with Section 8 that at least gives me some positivity in what we do, right? Putting single moms, you know, people that are school teachers, are paramedics. I mean, Section 8, again, has this bad rap like it's only like low-income people. It's not. It's people that, you know, trying to live in Boca Raton in today's market because you work here and not spending $100,000 a year in rent or mortgage payments, it's not easy anymore.
Well, it's funny you talk about Section 8. So another property manager I know, good client of ours and friend, he was actually on this podcast recently, so Larry knows him too. He manages a good amount of units, and he's kind of been going down the rabbit hole of really trying to streamline the Section 8 process for some of his clients and even some of his properties that he owns to really perfect that, to get Section 8 tenants in much quicker, because you really can in this market, in a down market, you can get higher rents with Section 8. And another guy I closed a deal for, their family, they own hundreds of units and they're almost exclusively Section 8. And I said, you know, a good portion of their units are in not the best areas, like for example, Riviera Beach, more you know, tougher kind of Class C areas. And I said, how do you manage these units and kind of make sure that you don't have crime in the apartment complexes that you're managing and things like that? He said, what we do, even on smaller multifamily, maybe a quadplex or something like that, he said, we'll put in cameras, and then we'll also put in a speaker. And he said, if people are mingling outside or we're seeing people coming and going, we get on the speaker and say, you know, no trespassing. We'll be calling the authorities if you don't leave immediately. It's more management intensive, but they said the you know, the return on investment, the rates of return for Section 8, it's certainly in a down market are definitely higher.
I mean,
so
have a Section 8 property in Riviera Beach. 2 units on the same property, in between 2 Section 8 inspections, one for the back unit, one for the front unit. They were both vacant at the time. Got all the window unit air conditioners stolen, broke in, trashed the place, left the water running. I mean, just it's really rough. And vacancy, that's like one of the hidden things about vacancy is you get squatters. You get people that steal stuff in lower income areas. Another cool thing about Section 8, so I got a single family home off of Palm Beach Lakes, you know, not a bad area, West Palm Beach. Listed it for $2,000 that the owner put in about $20,000, new impact glass windows, new kitchen, new bathrooms. It's been at least $20,000, maybe $30,000. I don't know all the details offhand. Listed it for $2,500, couldn't get anyone. We're down to $2,000, no offers. Got $2,585 from Section 8, right?
Above original listing.
Above original listing. That's what Section 8 negotiated. You know,
that's
and
amazing.
And plus, we've got a single mom moving in there with 2 kids. Her mother, who's elderly, is moving in with them. And she literally was crying how happy she was to move into this house. The owner's happy. I've got this great family moving in. And to me, again, it gets a bad rap. In certain things, certain areas, certain circumstances, there's nothing better than Section 8.
So that's why. So we had like 60% of the portfolio as Section 8, and then the market started running, and we basically have like one Section 8 tenant at this point, right?
Right.
And now we're having the same conversation, even when looking at properties that we might buy that aren't Section 8 properties. We're looking at the Section 8 voucher options, and we're just like, oh my God, we might actually be able to make a crazy return on this if we take the $2,000 rent and turn it into $3,000 with Section 8 as we turn these units, because the market's changed.
Right, and there's this website, I think it's like Go Section 8 and different ones.
Just plug it in.
Yeah, you're not dealing with realtors, right?
Yep.
There's no commissions to realtors. Yep. You're putting in there, people are reaching out to you, and again, Section 8, it's still up to you what tenant you place. We still meet with with our tenants. We still have them do a credit report. We still make sure that their income is legitimate, right? Section 8 doesn't pay 100% of the rent. So you still do your due diligence. You still make sure you still do the routine inspections like you would anywhere else. And you put yourself in a very good position. But, I mean, just not having to pay realtor commissions, not having to argue about the quality of the property because it has to meet those standards. So there isn't the tenant moves in and decides that they have buyer's remorse and I don't like this and I don't like that. It doesn't happen in Section 8.
Yeah.
It's all discussed, it's approved, and it's done. And it really forces the owners to step up at times.
And usually the tenant's grateful because it's not easy for them to always find a place.
They're grateful, and they also know that if they have a problem, meaning they have to be evicted or they're not paying their rent or they're getting in disputes, they lose that golden ticket. So they're a lot more willing to, that was my stepson. He came here. He's not in the house anymore. He caused that problem. It'll never happen again. Let me know what it costs. We'll take care of it, right? You're working with people that are way more in tune with finding a solution than some rich guy in Boca who's like, I'll call my attorney.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
That's actually something unique too, compared to like the average tenant that moves in without Section 8 and the tenant that moves in with Section 8. They've gone through a process with the Section 8 people. And so they know they've filled out paperwork, they've asked all these questions, they've met with these people. They did all this in order to get to that
They're
point.
not felons, they're not wanted, they're not,
but they also made the effort.
No,
so
you're 100%
mentally,
psychologically.
They're like already, like you just said, in tuned with the process. And they're talking to you about like, hey, this is my situation with Section 8. The voucher's changing. I got to pay a little bit more per month. If whatever it is, they get this stuff so much that they're dialed in and they're on team. Get it done.
Yeah, they're definitely become part of the team, right? And again, we deal with a lot of horrible situations and a lot of angry people, and to really be able to provide a home for somebody that's never had a home, that they've never lived in a house, they've lived in apartments and stuff, and to provide that a backyard for a kid. It really is like we have a lot of tough stuff in our world, and it really gives our not just me, my team, right? Because we employ several women and people with families and kids, and they hate when we have evictions. It's really emotional on our team to do rent collection, to deal with delinquencies. So you got to give them that joy. It really helps.
Some of the wins,
Yeah.
No, that's great.
You as predominantly a title company and eviction attorney, you don't deal with a lot of wins, I guess. in that.
Yeah, I mean, the wins are certainly on the title and closing side are great.
For sure.
New buyers and properties or sellers that are happy they got an albatross off their back or whatever. They're super relieved. They'll give you a hug, here and there.
Absolutely.
Not always. Sometimes you have the jerk off. And Larry knows all about that.
So I got a really funny story, and you might not remember this, but about maybe 8 or 9 years ago, one of the first times I met Jerron is that we engaged his company, and we had property. I took on a portfolio of properties, a rough area, and a Spanish-speaking family, and we ended up in eviction court because there was disputes about money, and we couldn't work things out, unfortunately, so we ended up in eviction court, and the daughter's translating for the dad, and he's going on and on about, all this negative stuff with money. And, long story short, we win the trial because, he just didn't pay his rent, and he decided to charge us. He ran at us, and this older bailiff, like out of nowhere, I'm like, oh my God, this guy's coming right at us. And I'm like, I'm not a little guy.
We got to protect the bailiff.
And then this little bailiff, a small guy, he's maybe, I don't know, I remember being an older little guy, and he just goes and he tackles this young guy, puts him on his back, and, cuffs. I'm like, oh my God. It was really funny. Do you remember that?
Yeah. There's I think I've forgotten more stories than most people have regarding crazy stuff like that. Yeah, I've got a lot of crazy eviction court stories.
Yeah, one of the great things I've learned too.
I always said I could create a reality TV show out of eviction court. Between the mediations and the hearings, and I think it would be a major hit show.
Yeah.
But someone should do that. Yeah.
And I've been to court with Jerron too. That's kind of, we met a little bit before that, but Jerron stepped up and helped me out in a situation on a property I bought. I was in a jam.
Yeah.
Similar, just craziness, right? Just crazy people on the other side.
The best part about that story is that after that, right, we won, we went through the whole process. The wife, the mother of that daughter that was translating, they kicked the husband out. She came back to us. She's still my tenant to this day. 8 years later. Yeah.
Wow.
She's still he was
what
just
an amazingly forgiving guy. Yeah, he's a bad dude.
Yeah, and again, I'm not in this about winning pride or respect from people, because that's not going to get you very far in real estate, right? you got to take the wins. And the fact that she came back and was like, hey, we really want to live here. We really like it. He's gone. We separated. He's no longer in the house. I'm going to pay. And it took her about a year and a half to get caught up on her past due. She was paying her rent plus a certain amount. And again, she's still our tenant to this day.
Yeah, I was going to say, the eviction court is probably that, and maybe divorce court are the two areas where you see human beings at their little worst, other than maybe on the battlefield. But they're desperate to keep a roof over their head. They'll do anything to do that. They'll be willing to lie. They'll be willing to obfuscate the truth, to tell stories, whatever it is.
Even deeper than that,
fake, receipts or whatever. I've seen it all.
You have husband and wives that the husband's telling the wife that he's paying the rent when he's not.
Oh, yeah.
And he's living somewhere else. I mean, it all comes clean that day.
And a lot of times with couples, they're in the midst of breaking up or, and then next is divorce court. First is eviction court, then divorce court, but, or vice versa. But it's really sad stuff.
Fortunately, in my career, I've had many opportunities where we call buying keys in the industry, right? You just
cash for keys.
Cash for keys. Like how do we move forward with this, right? Yeah. I could be your worst nightmare. I could call the credit bureaus. I could evict you, or you can voluntarily leave. I'll give you money. We'll sign a release.
I'll give you your security deposit back. Let me inspect the property. Okay, it looks pretty decent.
And also help you find a house once you get back on good footing. A lot of times people just have horrible situations in life. Yeah. Family member, like we said, sick, or you lose your job, you get into a car accident.
Just people living one paycheck.
Right, you get divorced and now you can't afford.
Paycheck, yeah.
Hey, we'll help you find a studio. We'll get back on your feet, then I'll help you. And I'll also write a referral to you or give you a reference for the next decade. Just work with me here. Yeah, don't make me kick you out, because that's not me, right?
Yeah. So typically you're not in court like you and I just described, right? Mm-hmm. Like usually managed properly, the tenant either leaves themselves, you negotiate a deal, or you do file for eviction and it just ends in 30 days and you're never in court.
It's been a long time, at least probably 5 years from the time I've moved somebody in, done the background screening, collected first, last, and security, rented them an apartment, and then had to evict them. Mm-hmm. Most of the time, I get hired to do that. I get hired by someone who's like, the relationship has broken down, it's on you.
You're taking over a portfolio or a property, and they move the bad tenant in, or that's what's causing them to say, hey, I need professional management here. I can't do this anymore.
Right. Yeah. So many times relationships with clients have started with, I've talked to a couple of property managers. They told me to give them a call after I get out my bad tenant, after I evict them. Is that how you work? I'm like, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Let's call Jerron Kelley, Kelley and Grant. Let's start the process. Yeah. Start with a 3-day notice, and let's go from there.
Because that's when I consider that for a small landlord, someone maybe has 1 property, 2 properties, that is an actual life event. That, we always talk about, you want to find people with life events like they're going through a divorce or someone passed away. That's how you find and list properties. But certainly for how you find landlord clients, it is those significant events. Maybe there was a flood on the property or something. They're just overwhelmed. They're fed up, and either they're going to sell it or they're going to get help and get the place straightened out. And
I got one of my better portfolios up in Jacksonville, basically off a situation where one of the tenants living in a property got into a bad car accident. And he basically moved back into this property, and it flooded. And they were just devastated. They didn't know how to help him. He didn't have any family. He couldn't really live in there, during the time of us repairing it. And they just didn't know how to handle it, So they hired me. I found out, he didn't have any family. I found out where he worked. We talked to his employer. He worked at a restaurant. It was a great couple. And they helped him, and we helped him. We helped him get into somewhere else and get out of that house. Wow. And I earned the business that way. It's just like, you just got to dive in sometimes, right? Because people aren't emotionally equipped to deal with their own stuff, right? And it's like that's why there's lawyers. That's why there's property managers and people and real estate brokers to sell their properties for them. It's like,
if it was easy, we wouldn't exist.
Right. Yeah. It's like we get calloused by it and stuff because, I've been, like I said, been doing this since '94. So I've been through it all. I've seen the grossest of the gross, I remember one time trying to acquire a property in Chicago. And, it was Chicago has basements. Here in Florida, we don't have basements. But so there were almost like stalls, like chicken wire stalls in this basement. And I was going down the stairs and the smell hit me. And I'm like, what's going on? And there was people living in these stalls and there was literally an SRO, illegal SRO in a basement. in Chicago.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, and it was like
where they just put sleeping bags.
Yeah,
and,
exactly. Like,
oh my
some
God.
had cots, and
Wow.
I made it like almost to the last step, and then I didn't even get off the stairs. I'm like, I can't be involved. Like the level of illegal stuff happening here. But I mean, again, you see it all, and you have to try to put yourself again in the place of that owner and not be like, well, why don't you just evict them?
Yeah.
But again, one of the best things I learned from you is don't use the realtor lease. Don't use this common document that we're all told to use that is very much doesn't really solve any problems, right? I think I'm up to, with your lease, which we renew every year with you, I think I have 8 addendums, attached to it. Let's solve every problem that obviously you're never going to solve.
Keep adding to it. No, but it's evolved. I always tell my clients, a lease should be a living document.
Yes.
It should be something that as you go through all these dozens and dozens of scenarios, okay, well, I need to address this because last time I spoke to Jerron, I didn't really have anything in my lease that addressed this specific weird, odd situation. Or maybe it addressed it, but just not with enough specificity. And I want to make it really abundantly clear or duplicative. Like it's in the lease and in my addendum and it's in my rules and regulations and it's highlighted and it's capitalized.
And now you have to initiate
unapproved overnight guests, or whatever you're putting in there. Yeah.
And again, it's educating that person onto what their responsibility is, right? Make them into a good tenant.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So moving forward, what's the, kind of where do you see yourself 2, 3, 4 years from now? What's the...
Absolutely. Yeah. So being here in South Florida and then being up in Jacksonville, I'm very interested in, finding a business sort of in the middle. I'm negotiating right now on a interesting property management company to acquire them in and around, the Orlando area to kind of make it the whole state.
That gap.
Bridge that gap.
Very cool.
That acquisition will put me at around 1,000 doors under management, which would, really, really excited about that.
Very impressive.
That's
very impressive. Yeah. Most property managers don't make it to that level.
For me, I would like to get back into the what I used to do of some development. I recently purchased for myself and my family a single family home that was a neighborhood and the worst property on the street. They called it the Munster house. There hadn't been a tree work done on this house since the 80s.
Oh, wow.
So we did that. We took a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. We did a second floor addition, created a master suite on the second floor, rebuilt the house to the studs, new electric, new water service, all new impact windows, new roof. And it was such a wonderful project for me. I mean, I know for a lot of people that would be a nightmare.
Yeah.
But I did it myself as an owner builder, pulled all my own permits, brought in all the subcontractors. So just, I would love to do 3 or 4 more properties like that in my neighborhood. I mean, I'm in a small, one way in, one way out, non-HOA, 22 homes in my community. And I mean, that's ultimately what I would do for enjoyment, where a lot of people would be like, you're crazy. But
I love that.
I turned 51 this month. I've got a 6-year-old, so I'm not going anywhere. I got,
love it.
I got a long term.
You're in the grind and you're growing and that's cool.
Hardest part about my business for me is employees. Employee turnover, employee retention, teaching people to speak in our language, right? Teaching people that you don't, we do traction, the EOS operating system. We go through it every year. And there's this thing in the book about don't let people leave monkeys on your desk. Don't let everybody on your team come in, drop all their problems on there and say, how solve this? Educate and empower your team to come up with solutions. Bring those solutions to you and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about trying this way, right? Let people make some mistakes, which is hard to do. But, it's really about, and again, as you grow, I spend a lot more time in the admin side and the operations of employees where I don't want to be. That's why I'd love to get back out and be in the field more, where I'm really comfortable. I love walking properties with an investor. Okay. I love going out there and saying, when they've already identified 2 or 3 they want, right? Oh, what's the best fit for you, right? How much money do you have to invest today, tomorrow? Let's strategically plan for windows, roof. That old thing with investors you guys have had 1,000 times, right? Don't take any money as profit. Make sure you have a minimum of 3 to 6 months of mortgage, taxes, insurance, HOA dues. Start putting money aside for the capital improvements of refrigerators and air conditioners and all that stuff you need, and really look at it as a long-term solution. If we work with people like that, I love that. I love planning because you're providing somebody a retirement. not everybody's got a lot of money, and everybody, we'll go to Florida and retire one day. Well, how do you do that, right?
Yeah.
Buy a new construction house today, rent it for the next decade. Keep quality tenants in there. Move into that house in 10 years, 15 years, or sell it, right? I think one of the best things that I learned from our friend Emmanuel St. Germain here at Choice Mortgage is the only free money you're ever going to get is equity out of your home, right? So start building equity, start investing in yourself, and get those properties. Get that long-term play, right?
Yeah, it's very true. No, I love that. Any other questions, Danny?
This is great.
Awesome.
Yeah,
you guys are awesome. It's a pleasure.
Man. No, this is super fun. Love it. Wishing you all the best. I know that you don't need my well wishes because you're a rock star.
No, I appreciate it.
I'll say one last thing. Danny, he's been. How long have you been in BNI?
Since I moved to Florida, so a decade.
So a decade. Yeah. He's consistently I don't know how much you know about BNI, but BNI is a group of different professionals from different professions that get together. They meet about once a week, and they give referrals to each other. They do other things as well, support and things like that, but it's a referral network, and he's consistently the number one referrer onto other people every month in his group. And Danny just has a heart of gold, and just keep being you, man.
I appreciate it, man.
I really appreciate you.
Yeah.
So
and one of the most important things about being in real estate investment, have a great attorney.
had a great realtor too.
Absolutely.
Two of them.
But really, Kelly and Grant.
I appreciate it. Thanks for the shout out. But
absolutely.
Awesome. Great having you, Danny.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's really a pleasure to be here.
We'll be putting your contact information in the comments section of the video and in the description. If people have a question, they can reach out to KeyRenter, talk to you.
Absolutely. To me, it's like my motto is free advice. Even if you don't use me, get that investment property. Let somebody help coach you. There's no expense of that. When you get to 4, 5, 6 units and you need the help, that's when you can come on to me. But it's really important to be clear about what you're doing. I'd love to give anybody any free advice. What you need to do, what mistakes to avoid. Right. Another thing is have a great real estate broker that's looking over your shoulder and making sure you don't buy something that you shouldn't.
Agreed.
That's a good point.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Well, good. Thanks again, Danny.
Thank you so much.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
If you like this video, please like and subscribe.